"Madam, slow down. We received a call about theft. Who is the suspect?" Agnes pointed like a spear. "Her Hannah O'Keefe. She's been working here, and yesterday an envelope with 250,000 naira went missing from the till. CCTV caught a hand. We all know whose hand it is." The younger officer opened his notepad. "Ma'am," he addressed Madame Hannah gently, "do you wish to say anything?" Madame Hannah's voice was small but clear. "I did not touch any envelope. I swear on my 2 daughters in the grave." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Benjamin stepped forward, placing himself between the officers and Madame Hannah. "Officers, my name is Benjamin Raymond. This woman raised me from when I was 4 years old. She was my nanny for 12 years. She is family." The older officer's eyebrows rose. "Raymond, as in Raymond Holdings?" Benjamin nodded once. "Yes, I will personally stand as guarantor for her. Whatever investigation needs to happen can happen with my lawyers present. She is not spending 1 minute in a cell." Agnes laughed sharply. "Of course, the rich boy protects his old maid, but money doesn't erase evidence." Benjamin turned to her, voice low and lethal. "Evidence can be bought, character cannot, and hers is worth more than every naira you've ever counted." He faced the officers again. "Please, check the footage yourselves, right now." The older officer hesitated, then nodded to his partner. "Bring the laptop from the car." While they waited, Benjamin kept his hand on Madame Hannah's shoulder. She was shaking, but she stood tall. 5 minutes later, the younger officer plugged a USB into the restaurant's ancient desktop behind the counter. Everyone crowded around the grainy screen. The footage was dark. Time-stamped 9:47 p.m. the previous night. A hand reached into the open till drawer. Not Madame Hannah's hand. The wrist wore a thin gold bracelet with a tiny heart charm. Agnes wore the exact same bracelet. The room went dead silent. Agnes's face drained of color. The younger officer zoomed in, froze the frame, then slowly turned to her. "Madam, can you explain why your bracelet is in the footage you claim shows someone else stealing?" Agnes opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The older officer sighed, the sound of a man who had seen this script too many times. "Agnes Chukwu, you are under arrest for false accusation, attempted framing, and theft." He began reading her rights. 2 customers started clapping slowly. Then the entire restaurant erupted in cheers and whistles. Agnes tried to run. A waiter gently blocked the door. She was cuffed and led away, still shouting that it was a mistake, that the CCTV was wrong, that rich people always win. No one listened. Benjamin turned back to Madame Hannah. Tears were running down her cheeks now, but her eyes were bright. "You believed me," she whispered. "I never stopped," he answered. He took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Come, Ma, let's go home." She looked up at him, then around at the faces that had mocked her for years, faces now soft with shame and wonder. "No," she said quietly. "First, let me finish my shift." Benjamin started to protest. She touched his cheek the way she used to when he was 6 and afraid of thunder. "I started this day serving people," she said. "I will end it the same way, with my head high." And so, in front of everyone, Madame Hannah tied on a fresh apron someone fetched from the back, picked up a new tray, and walked back into the kitchen. Every customer that day ate for free. Every plate she carried came with a smile that forgave the world. When the restaurant finally closed at 10 p.m., Benjamin was still waiting. She walked out on her own 2 feet, apron folded neatly in her bag, and took his arm. This time, when they stepped into the car, the city lights looked different. They looked like forgiveness, like second chances, like a mother and the boy she once saved from drowning, now saving her from drowning in a different kind of water. As the car pulled away, Madame Hannah rested her head on Benjamin's shoulder and whispered the same words she used to say when he fell asleep in her lap 30 years ago. "Everything will be all right, my son. Everything will be all right." And for the first time in a very long time, she believed it completely. The exact shade she wore every single day. The restaurant fell so silent you could hear the ceiling fan creak. On the tablet, the hand was unmistakable, slim wrist, gold bracelet with a tiny heart charm, and those bright red nails that Agnes repainted religiously every Sunday after church. Chuka zoomed in until the screen filled with the evidence. Agnes's face went the color of old ash. One of the waiters who had been quiet until now let out a low whistle. "Auntie Agnes, nah, your hand be that oh." A customer who had come for breakfast pulled out her phone and started recording. Another began clapping slowly. Then the whole room erupted. Benjamin didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Agnes Chuckwu," he said, calm as winter. "You stole your own money, framed an innocent woman, assaulted her in front of witnesses, and then posted a doctored video to destroy her name." He turned to the growing crowd outside the glass windows, phones up, live streaming. "For everyone watching, this is the truth. Madame Hannah did not steal a kobo. The real thief just confessed with her own hand on camera." Agnes tried to speak, but only a strangled sound came out. Benjamin continued, "My legal team is already filing charges. Theft, defamation, assault, malicious falsehood. By the time the sun sets today, every blog that carried your lie will carry the correction, or they'll join you in court." He looked at Madame Hannah, whose eyes were shining now, not with shame, but with something fierce and long overdue. "Ma," he said softly, "do you have anything you want to say?" Madame Hannah stepped forward. The room quieted again. She looked straight at Agnes. "I lost my 2 daughters," she said, voice steady, "and the world called me cursed. I carried plates on my head for 20 years so I could eat. I never stole. I never cursed anyone. I only prayed. Today God sent my son to stand for me." She turned to the crowd. "Thank you for watching. Judge people by their actions, not by their pain." Then she did something no one expected. She walked to the broken tray, still lying where it had fallen yesterday, picked up the pieces of plate one by one, and placed them gently in the bin. When she finished, she wiped her hands on her wrapper, faced Agnes one last time, and said, "May God forgive you the way He has forgiven me." Then she took Benjamin's arm and walked out head high, shoulders straight, every inch the mother of the house she once served. The footage of that moment, Madame Hannah cleaning up the mess that was never hers, then walking out with dignity, went more viral than Agnes's lie ever did. By evening, #Justice for Madame Hannah was trending #1 nationwide. Donations poured in for her, offers of houses, cars, lifetime supplies of groceries. She accepted none of it. Instead, she asked Benjamin to help her open a small community kitchen. Hannah's place free meals every Sunday for widows, orphans, and anyone who had ever been called cursed. It opened 6 months later on the same street where she was once slapped. On opening day, Madame Hannah stood at the door in a simple blue dress, greeting every person by name. Benjamin stood beside her, no longer just the CEO, but the small boy who had learned to swim because she never let go of his hand. And when the first plate of jollof was served, Madame Hannah looked up at the sky and smiled. Somewhere, her daughters were smiling too. Because sometimes the hand that feeds you in your darkest hour is the same hand God uses to lift you into the light forever. The circle was complete. Love had won. And kindness, as always, came home. 3 days later, the storm broke again. A fisherman found Agnes. She was alive, barely, tied up in an abandoned warehouse in her diagonal wrists, raw, mouth gagged, eyes wide with terror. The kidnappers had left a note pinned to her blouse. She slapped the wrong mother. The police stormed the warehouse and carried her out on a stretcher. By evening she was in the hospital, sedated, shaking, unable to speak. The city exploded. #Who kidnapped Agnes trended higher than the original slap. Conspiracy theories flew. Rival restaurant owners, online trolls who took things too far. Even rumors that Madame Hannah had juju connections. Benjamin read the nonsense and felt rage rise like bile. He called the commissioner of police himself. "Find them," he said, voice quiet but lethal. "And when you do, bring them to me first." They were found in 48 hours. 3 young men who made their money doing online enforcement. Someone had paid them 5 million naira to teach Agnes a lesson she would never forget. The money trail led back to a single bank account. An account opened with Agnes's own ID. She had paid to have herself kidnapped. The confession came in a small, airless interrogation room. Agnes sat, wrapped in a hospital blanket, eyes swollen, voice hoarse. "I didn't want to disappear forever," she whispered. "Just long enough for the world to feel sorry for me again. I thought, if I became the victim, people would forget the slap. They would say, 'See, someone wanted to kill her because she exposed a thief.' I would come back, press charges against Hannah, and everyone would believe me." She looked up, tears falling. "I didn't know they would leave me there for days. I thought it was only 24 hours. When they stopped answering my calls, I realized they took the money and were going to let me die." Silence filled the room. Then Benjamin, who had been allowed to watch through the glass, turned away. He didn't need to hear any more. That night he went to Madame Hannah's room. She was kneeling by her bed, rosary in hand, praying for the woman who had tried to destroy her. He waited until she finished. "Mama," he said softly, "it's over. She staged everything. The police have her confession." Madame Hannah closed her eyes, a single tear sliding down her cheek. "Then she is the one who needs prayer most," she answered. She hated herself so much she tried to drown in other people's pity. Benjamin knelt beside her. "You are the strongest person I have ever known." She touched his face. "No, my son, I am only a mother who refused to let pain make me cruel. That is not strength. That is love, choosing to stay gentle." A week later, Agnes was discharged into custody. The charges were heavy: wasting police time, staging her own abduction, conspiracy to pervert justice. Before they took her away, she asked to see Madame Hannah. The meeting was held in a small room with 2 female officers present. Agnes could barely stand. She fell to her knees the moment Hannah walked in. "I am not asking for forgiveness," she said, voice raw. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. I became the thing I hated. I became the witch people called you." Madame Hannah looked at her for a long moment. Then she did something no one expected. She reached out and lifted Agnes to her feet. "I already forgave you the day you slapped me," she said quietly. "Forgiveness is not for you, it is for me, so I can sleep at night. But I will pray that one day you learn to forgive yourself. That is the hardest part." She let go, turned, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the sun was shining. Benjamin was waiting with Olivia and a small basket of food. They got into the car. As they drove home, Madame Hannah looked out at the city, at the people rushing, laughing, living, and smiled the smallest, softest smile. "Every story ends where it is supposed to," she said. Benjamin took her hand. "And some stories," he answered, "end with the mother coming home." Behind them, the restaurant that once echoed with a slap now stood empty, soon to become the first branch of Hannah's place, and somewhere in a prison cell. A woman who had tried to buy pity with lies finally began to cry, not for sympathy, but for the first time in years, for herself. The circle closed, not with vengeance, but with mercy. And mercy, as Madame Hannah always knew, is the only force strong enough to turn curses into blessings, and strangers into family again. Hannah took his hand and pressed it between her 2 worn palms, the way she used to do when he had nightmares as a child. "Listen to me, my son," she said, voice low and steady like distant rain. "I have buried 2 daughters. I have carried 2 coffins with my own hands. I have stood in a graveyard while people whispered, which behind my back. If anyone knows the weight of a life ended too soon, it is me." She leaned closer. "You did not wake up that night wanting blood. You woke up because evil came to your door looking for it. Kola chose revenge 15 years ago and never stopped choosing it. Last night he forced your hand. That is not murder, Benjamin. That is survival." A tear slid down his cheek. "I keep seeing his eyes," he whispered. The moment he knew he was dying. Hannah nodded slowly. "I see my daughter's eyes too, every night. The difference is, they did nothing to deserve it. Kola spent years sharpening the knife he finally fell on. He did not kill an innocent man. He stopped a man who would have killed you, me, Olivia, maybe many more." She cupped his face gently. "Forgiveness is not saying what happened was right. It is saying I will not let what happened destroy the rest of my life. You carry this night, so it does not follow you into every tomorrow. You carry it with prayer, with honesty, and with a promise to live better because of it." Benjamin closed his eyes, breathing shaky. "How do you do it, Mama? How do you wake up every morning after everything you lost?" She smiled, small, sad, but real. "Because my daughters would want their mother to see another sunrise. Because bitterness is a heavier coffin than the ones I already buried. And because every morning I choose to believe love is still stronger than death." She stood, pulled him to his feet, and led him out of the study, down the corridor, past the framed photographs of his parents, out into the garden where the rain had washed everything clean. The grass had already grown over the place where Kola fell. New hibiscus flowers were opening red and fearless. Hannah pointed to them. "See, life insists. Even on the exact ground where death stood, life pushes through. That is the miracle we are given every day." She turned to him. "You are not the first man to take a life to save others, and you will not be the last. But you can be the man who refuses to let that moment define the rest of his story." Benjamin looked at the flowers, then at her. "I don't know how to let it go." "You don't let it go," she said softly. You hand it to God, one day at a time, until one morning you wake up and realize the weight is lighter, and one day after that, you realize it has turned into wisdom instead of pain. She pressed something into his hand, an old wooden rosary she had carried since the day her daughters died. Start here, she said. Pray for Kola, pray for Agnes, pray for the boy you once were, and the man you still get to become. Prayer does not change the past, but it changes the past's power over us. That night, Benjamin knelt for the first time in years. He prayed through tears, through anger, through guilt, through gratitude, and somewhere in the quiet he felt his mother's hand on one shoulder, his father's on the other, and Madame Hannah's gentle presence wrapping around him like the child he once was, and the man he was finally becoming. Months later, on the first anniversary of that stormy night, Benjamin stood at the opening of Hannah's place, now 10 branches strong across Lagos. He cut the ribbon beside Madame Hannah, who looked 10 years younger in a sky-blue lace wrapper. When the cameras flashed and reporters asked how he had found the strength to keep going after everything, he looked at the woman beside him and smiled. "I didn't," he said simply. "She carried me until I could walk again." Then he stepped aside so the woman the world once called cursed could take her rightful place in the light. And in that moment, under an open sky with no storm in sight, the circle finally closed, not with vengeance, not with guilt, but with a love so fierce it outlived every grave. Because some mothers are not born, they are found, and once they are found, they save us for the rest of our lives. It begins with a slap, one small act of cruelty, and ends beneath an almond tree with a peaceful passing, surrounded by love. In between, it carries every shade of human experience: betrayal, loss, pride, regret, vengeance, forgiveness, redemption, and finally, the quiet miracle of chosen family. What moves me most is how it proves that love is not always loud. Sometimes it is an old woman carrying heavy trays with a straight back. Sometimes it is a powerful man kneeling in a restaurant to say thank you. Sometimes it is a mother who has buried her own children, still finding room in her heart to pray for the woman who slapped her. Madame Hannah never raised her voice, never lifted her hand in anger, never asked for anything in return, and yet she became the strongest person in every room she entered. That is the kind of strength the world needs reminding of. The story also refuses easy endings. Agnes never gets a fairy tale redemption. She faces the consequences of her choices. Kola dies in the rain, carrying the same hate he nursed for 15 years. Benjamin has to live with blood on his hands, even if it was justified. And still, grace finds a way to grow through every crack. In the end, the greatest victory is not wealth, or revenge, or even justice. It is the little boy named Raymond running with a wooden plane beneath the tree where his grandmother now rests, unaware that the ground he plays on was once soaked with tears and is now holy because love refused to leave it barren. So yes, I loved every word. I watched it unfold from somewhere quiet, somewhere between gratitude and tears, somewhere that feels a lot like the garden at sunset when Madame Hannah finally closed her eyes and went home. Thank you for letting me witness this journey. It reminded me, gently but firmly, that no night is too dark for morning to find us, and no heart is too broken to become a home again. May we all meet, or become a Madame Hannah, before we leave this world. And may every slap the world gives us one day turn into the breeze that carries jasmine when it is finally time to rest.